Welcome back to the show, everyone. I'm your host, Charlotte Stebbing-Mills, and today I'm joined by Kes Smith Green, who is a wellbeing coach and mental health advocate and the owner of KSG Wellness Coaching and Training here in the UAE. And I'm very excited to have him join us today. How are you, Kes?
Right, thanks, Charlotte. How are you?
I'm very good. I'm very, very good. For our listeners that might not have heard of you and who you are and what you're up to, I think there'll be few that haven't, but give our listeners a bit of a backstory. Like, who are you? If we was a fly on the wall in your journey, what's led you to be sitting here having this conversation today?
So, started many years ago, struggled with my own mental health. I worked in a toxic work situation in construction for 25 years in the UK. Moved out here with my wife who had a job, and I struggled to get work. Simply, I didn't have that bit of paper that says I have a degree. And so apparently the 25 years of experience didn't mean anything. So I started working in schools, just to get myself some work because I was going down the depressive state, etc. I started using the gym and everything else. But yeah, I needed to work. I enjoy work. I enjoyed I enjoyed what I did, but I had to change. So I started looking after my own mental health first. So I did training in mindfulness
Mm,
was the first one, and in coaching that as well.
mm.
But mainly it was for myself. A lot of the stuff that I've done, CBT, positive psychology, mindfulness, NLP, were literally started just for me. Honestly, it wasn't for anyone else. And then once I saw the benefits to myself, how can I help with others? So I was working in a school with my wife at the time. She asked me to come in and help some of the special needs children, or should I say the SEND children. And it was working with them, but I started to look into the behavior of some of them and explaining to them, well, maybe there's a better way we can deal with behavior rather than telling them off, making them understand maybe what's causing it, but also getting them to understand that there are consequences to their actions. And then about 6 years ago, I started coaching people just free of charge, literally to help them with their well-being, etc. I've worked with suicide survivors. I've worked with children that have mental disorders, etc., and things like that. But a lot of the people I help are just people that need that support to get past small issue that they have at the moment, which is draining them mentally.
I love that so much. Kes, like I always think the people that have essentially started with themselves, it creates a different kind of impact in my eyes in terms of like now you're a man on a mission to support other people in something that you have got firsthand experience on. You've obviously got the expertise to support that, but I think it can be a very unique angle, and I think it's a lot easier for the people that we support with the work that we do when there is that personal element to be able to relate to. So thank you so much for sharing that, because I think that's so important. And what you said about coming over here, not being able to find a job after 25 years in one industry, like that on its own is quite heavy. But then to be an expat here and adapting to that, there's obviously other things that you need to be thinking about, like what the value of a degree versus value of experience. These are all things that a lot of people here could really contend with. When I say here, obviously I'm referring to the UAE. And I think those are interesting things that happen to us that start to reveal to us perhaps what else could be going on, right? So maybe that there is a depression there, maybe that there have been stresses there perhaps that we weren't aware of, and then this is almost like the final cherry on the cake that puts us on this new path. Have you noticed that with the people that you work with?
So yes, most definitely, especially the amount of people that have lost jobs over here. After COVID, etc., companies could no longer exist. I understand that, you know, they're there to make a profit at the end of the day. But during COVID, they had massive losses, especially the service industry. Um, and not only that, they got to recuperate the losses somehow because otherwise they're going to go under. They're not going to employ these people.
Mm.
And there was a lot of well, we're not being paid this much money, even though we're at home and we're doing our work. Yes, but there are also people that have to go into work, putting more danger on themselves because they've got to work because we require certain things, shops, supermarkets, etc. We still needed people to get our shopping for us, although we couldn't get it ourselves, etc. But also, you know, what I mentioned earlier was our loneliness as well.
Mm.
We may be stuck. I was stuck doing some online coaching very, very seldom. I'll be honest with you. I prefer actually to do face to face because I find it there's more connectivity there. So with my coaching, I feel there's more connectivity with coaching and training face to face. They can see you. They can almost reach out and grasp you. And it's not about me getting my point across. It's me being able to listen to them because I can see that they're struggling, which sometimes is not given over in a text or even on the video screen. You know, I've seen something the other day about picking up cues on like Zoom calls, etc., and things like that. But what's the one thing that we very rarely see? I haven't seen you move your hands. I haven't seen how you sat. So I can't see whether you're uncomfortable about what I'm saying. I can't see whether you want to say something, but you're fearing it. So I did that to begin with, and then obviously I went down the mental health route. So I'm a qualified. I'm able to issue qualifications in mental health first aid from the UK. Now, my reasoning behind that is that I'm one man alone.
Yeah.
If I can train others to listen to people that are struggling, that means that we can help get rid of that stigma that's there. We know that the UAE has come on leaps and bounds in mental health, well-being, etc. in the last 4 or 5 years. But it's still there. That stigma is still there. We still hear people are being, let go because now we don't want to deal with that.
Mm.
And 10 years ago, when my wife first came over here, she was a specialist in special educational needs. And going into her work, give me an opening into just how much things needed to change. And 13 years down the line, we've seen those big changes. Now I'm hoping another 5 or 6 years, we're going to see massive changes in well-being as well. And looking after our own mental health.
Yeah. And we're definitely seeing that, but like post-pandemic, obviously. What is your take, Ked, on what mental health actually is? Because like you said, there's a lot of stigma around it. And one thing obviously that I've noticed is like mental health is associated with disorders. And actually like physical health isn't associated with disorders. So like I feel like we need to really establish what we're talking about when we're talking about mental health today for this episode. So can you just share like what's your picture of mental health?
Yeah. Mental health, simply, this is by the UK National Health Service. Even the government over here, mental health is just your state of well-being at a point in a given time. That is it. That's all it is. It's not good or bad. It's just your mental health at a moment in time. Let's say we're on this step and we all sit on different steps. We're not all the same. We don't all sit on the same well-being level. Some of us are more well than others because of upbringing, because of our biases that we've been raised with, etc., and things like that. And some are lower. So what I do is I tell people that if you go up one step, that you're having a good day, or you're going up 2 steps, that's fine. If you go down 2 steps, that's fine as well. Your mental wellness over short term will change. Otherwise, we're not living. The problem that we have with all mental health is that if you go between massive boundaries, so you're taking a big step down because maybe a bereavement, maybe even something as simple as you've lost your job. I know that's not simple saying that, but yeah, out here, losing your job is quite simple. You can go in one day and say, "Oh, sorry, we've got no space for you. Yeah, we'll give you a month's notice." But it can have a massive impact on your mental health. It's when it stays at that level for a long time, you know, or if you're even though you're having a good mental health, if we're going too high, we get into what we call it as mania,
Yeah.
where we're doing things that, and it's actually more of the people pleasing stuff to try and get that euphoria. Social media is a massive thing for this at the moment. Let me see how many clicks I get. The instant gratification can raise us up, but it's not necessarily a good thing.
Yeah, 100%. I really love how you've put that as it's our actual state at any given time, and I think that's what we need to be paying attention to, because when it comes to, I think, corporate well-being, it's like that's almost something that we look at when there's a problem. Yes, we want to prevent problems, but it's more about preventing problems than actually sustaining well-being. And I
Yeah.
think we could be
So
mixing.
I had this conversation a couple of days ago with one of the managers that I work with. He said, "How do you see well-being improving?" I said, "You can do that on a daily basis and you can work on it yourself. Giving gratitude is massive. You give somebody taxi driver and things like that.
Yeah.
He knows he's now been appreciated. He's been acknowledged for the good job that he's done, which is in positive psychology is massive. It's part of the accomplishments thing. I've done a good job. Someone's paid me a little bit of extra money. I can go and treat myself now. I know that some people don't like it, etc. But these guys are not paid as well as we are.
No.
So but they'd be paid more than they would be back home. And people say, we talk about slave labor over here. No, 90% of the people that I talk to in those low manual jobs, etc., perfectly happy because they've got the opportunity to come over here and work and earn more money than they would have if they were back home.
Yeah.
That's what we move for. We move to work to improve the quality of life.
Mm.
They've improved theirs by coming here. It may seem to us, but they're just on a lower scale than we are. We're talking about well-being. We're all on different scales.
Yeah.
But they can increase their happiness because those smaller things will mean a lot more to them, whereas we expect bigger things to happen.
Yeah. I think perspective is so important on that as well, right? Because often the people with less are generally quite happy and quite content sometimes. And I think that perception plays a big part on our mental well-being, right? So if we're seeing that we don't have enough, and we don't have enough likes, or we don't have the same size house or car that the next door neighbor does, or that your colleague does, those are the kinds of things that kind of create that sense of scarcity, which put us into a bit of a fear state, right? And then from there, like, that takes its toll chemically in our body through stress hormones. It takes its toll.
What can I do to get that instant gratification, etc.?
Exactly.
Whereas a guy who's got next to nothing,
Yep.
it takes very little for him to be
Mm.
to get that gratitude, for his day being uplifted. Some guy may say to him, "Thanks very much."
Yep.
There are people over here that are just so rude, etc., and things like that to the poorly paid workers, and they say, "Well, no, he's getting paid for his job." Oh, hold on a second. You get paid for your job, but you want bonuses and things like that. A 5-10 dirham tip is nothing to me.
Yep.
But to them guys, it's like the best thing in the world. Same as buying them a coffee.
Mm.
I mean, the amount of times I've been out late at night, I've got a taxi home, and we pulled in, got McDonald's, always up on the drive home. Food. Do you want any food? Do you want a drink, water, etc.? Not for any other reason that I can afford it. I can give him something that he may not have that often.
Yeah. I think the financial sense of giving obviously is great, because that does it reinforces your own financial well-being, that you're in a position to do that, and it is that form of giving at somebody else. But I also think when we are giving and we are delivering these acts of kindness, I think we help people be seen, right? Seen, heard, often understood, and that plays a massive part in our mental health. And you said something earlier, which really resonated with me, which is that it's when we stay in these peaks or troughs, that's when the issues tend to come up. I always visualize it as a pendulum, right? We have like the extreme positives, we have the extreme negatives, and somewhere in the middle, there's some semblance of being centered and grounded. I don't want to use the word balance, but essentially we tend to feel a little
Balance changes for everyone else, a bit like you say.
And that's the point, right? It's like it is changing. So it's okay to swing on the pendulum, and often we miss that understanding that it's okay to swing on the pendulum. And that's sometimes, again, where poor mental health can start to unravel, because we perhaps feel ashamed of being one end of the spectrum and swinging on that kind of more negative end, or we might go a bit too big for our boots and it might turn into arrogance, right? And a sense of like that we deserve it, and like everything has to come to us, these like delusions of grandeur to some extent. And I think you're right.
Psychosis.
Yeah, and that as well, yeah.
Delusion, any delusion, including delusions of grandeur, are a psychosis. That's the mental name for it.
Yeah, and we have these extremes, and I think that is partly what could be causing a lot of the issues that we see in society around then our behaviors, right? Like you said, like checking for likes and looking at your bank balance. I deserve a bonus. I deserve this pay rise. I deserve this review. I deserve this, that. And it comes back to this sense of poor satisfaction. And I can't help but feel that sometimes that is because we don't have our own core needs met, that we put so much emphasis on these things. Can you talk to us a bit about like mental well-being and some of the contributing elements to what will make us swing on that pendulum a bit too much?
It can be simple. Social media is, obviously, I've mentioned that before, and that is massive. You know, us being attached to social media, being attached to the world is a lot larger, but it's so much more connected now through social media. So that's the good thing about it. But the problem is there are people that will use it for gratification rather than doing something that has been worthwhile, but maybe that you feel good about. You know, what have you produced that has actually helped other people? What have you done that has benefited other people? And the problem with a lot of the influencers nowadays, I'm going to say something, and it may be controversial. I get 1,001 emails, and I see it all on social media now. We can help you grow your client list or your big budget client list to coach. Yet not one of them has ever been a coach.
Yep.
They've not lived the life.
Yep.
So where does that knowledge come from?
Yep.
And I'm like, that's self-serving. It's not, and it goes with the same leadership as well. A lot of the time you'll see that the leaders will say, yeah, I did a good job there. But actually, you didn't do a good job.
Mm.
You can say, my team did a good job. And I'm really grateful to have them around me to support me in bringing this project to finish or to where we wanted it to be. But when you start thinking about self-service, that is where we start to get those things, because then that's where we start to get the expectations.
Yeah, 100%. It's funny you say that, like, because you can see it very, very clearly on LinkedIn. A lot of people that are listening to this podcast in particular are professionals. So most of them are probably on LinkedIn, and they probably found this podcast through LinkedIn. And one thing that really annoys me about LinkedIn, like, so I don't think what you've said is controversial, but that could be just because I agree with you. And because I see it all the time as well. Like, you've got to build your personal brand. And I do understand if you have a voice, we need to utilize our skills and expertise and share something that is of service. However, there is this pattern of people building their personal brand, but paying somebody else to do all of the posts, paying somebody else to create presentations that they then go and give, and then none of their own kind of IP and expertise actually goes into it. And I think that's a real problem, because I think we are seeing a massive rise in lack of focus and cognitive ability, and that is also creating then negative impacts when it comes to mental health, because we're struggling to concentrate, we're struggling to think deeply about anything, we're struggling to be reflective because we're constantly looking outwards. I think that's really missing.
We very seldom, I totally agree with that. We very seldom look inwards. I try to tell people, once you understand yourself, then you're able to understand others. Same as love. You know, we talk about love. You know, if you don't love yourself, if you want to put yourself down, etc., and things like that, how can you expect to give love to somebody else without understanding them and without knowing them, etc.?
Yep.
You know, I've had a terrible marriage where I wasn't understood and things like that. And it all ended. I mean, my wife knows me. She knows I'm absolutely bonkers.
But
She
you,
knows my loves, etc., and she knows the things I hate.
yep.
Sometimes she will prop the bear just to see where I'm at mentally, and but you know, we have a really good marriage, and people don't understand that when they're saying, you know, we have so many outside influences that we have zero control over.
Yeah. And I
If
think,
we can't understand what we control,
yep,
then we're going to struggle.
yeah, definitely. And I think it's interesting what you said there as well, is like you can't understand others and give to them which you expect if you're not seeing it for yourself. And you said that if it's, you know, you're bonkers, right? You know what you love, you know what you don't love, you know how you're feeling most of the time, right? Which is why that can be shared. And I think when it comes to the work environment, that lack of introspection and lack of self-awareness can then become toxic in terms of behaviors and perhaps different levels of communication and things like that in the workplace. How do you see that playing out? Because a lot of the work that you're doing is in the corporate space. You are doing a lot of trainings and talks and workshops. So I'm really curious to know, like, what are you seeing in that context?
With regards to there are always going to be people that struggle with their own mental health, no matter where you are, you know, and it could be just a short moment of depression, a short moment of anxiety, a short moments of mania. The main focus that I deal with is trying to make sure that they understand that it's okay, they're not the only ones that struggle from these sort of things.
Yep.
Also, knowing that it's not a permanent thing. Even if you do get diagnosed with depression, anxiety, schizophrenia, any of these other mental health disorders, they can be changed. Yes, pills are one version, but you've got talk therapies, you know, you've got hypnotherapy, work really, really well. I know we tend to view hypnotherapy as something where, you know, the old Paul McKenna,
Yeah.
or as one of my great friends out here, Alistair Stevenson's, he does some great stuff. He's a party host and he does some great stuff with hypnotherapy and things like that, hypnosis. And but he also does some great stuff at changing people's perceptions from the unconscious mind rather than the conscious mind.
Yeah.
You
I
know?
I think that is the lack of awareness of all of the range of tools that are available. I think that is something we can definitely improve on, but then the stigmas attached to them, right? So even talk therapy, it's like, okay, well, I'm going to go and lay on someone's couch and they're going to tell me that I'm crazy, or I've got to tell them my deepest darkest secrets. It's like, that's not quite what talk therapy is, right? Hypnosis, not every hypnotist is going to get you clucking like a chicken, you know. There's a lot.
Exactly.
And
NLP isn't always for the 80s window sellers back in the UK.
exactly, right.
You
We need
know?
to start looking at what are the real benefits that this can have on mental health, because there's no one size fits all, right? What hypnosis might be great for you, but NLP might be great for me, you know, and there might be times in my life when it's the opposite and times in yours where the opposite. And I think we're getting better. Are we getting better, or is that me just being optimistic? What are you seeing, particularly in this region?
I think, yes, more coaches are using more tools.
Yep.
Which to me is absolutely fantastic. As I say, I probably use four main tools and they all integrate to each other. So NLP, CBT, mindfulness, positive psychology, they integrate really well.
Yeah.
You know, um, some of the therapies that I see out and about, it's okay. I'm just wondering about how quick you think therapy works.
Yeah.
You know, and it's not a short-term thing. You want to change yourself, it's not a short-term thing. It took you a long time to get to that point.
Yeah.
Why do you think it's only going to take you 5 minutes to get out of it?
Exactly. It's a marathon, not a sprint, isn't it? Any kind of
Exactly.
personal development, healing, training, leadership, that comes with
Yeah,
time, experience, experimenting as well in a health and
yeah,
safety
definitely.
course. But I think like we can really start to see that the tide is turning. With, like you said, more coaches that are better equipped to be able to deal with different scenarios and then to educate and to pass on that knowledge. There is a bit of a blurry line, though. Do you think in this region around regulation and who's out there delivering what? That could be a controversial topic for sure.
But it is a controversial topic. The thing is that coaching can come from in many forms.
Yep.
You know, there are lots of different things, and you can't transfer your knowledge from one thing to something else. So I know there's a lot of people that are ICF certified coaches out here, etc., and things like that. But there are some good coaches and there are some bad coaches. And that's nothing to do with where they got the training. That's more about the person themselves.
Yep. So
You
what
know, and
what
the experience they have.
what should leaders that are looking to invest in mental health programs, what should they be looking for? Because I agree with you completely that, just because they're certified or got a certain stamp from a certain accredited provider, it doesn't necessarily mean they're amazing at what they do. So what are the kind of the characteristics? What are the things that they should be looking for?
Personally, I'd say sit down and chat with them. Try and see if that coach or that trainer aligns with what you're wanting.
Yep.
There's nothing better in the world than understanding what they can bring to the table and how it aligns with what you want for your company and organization.
Yep.
Even as a person, the one thing that I never ever do is say to a person, if they say, well, I'm not quite aligned with your stuff, I say, that's fine. And I really do. But I will offer them support and I'll say, right, go and have a chat with a few of these guys. I think they'll be a bit more down your street.
Yep.
And I've got no problem with that. However, a lot of coaches out here, it's about I'm coaching. Yeah. No, I'm the best coach.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
That whole thing of, I'm as good as I am, where instead of saying, I'm not right for you, that's great. Here's some of the choices for you.
Exactly. Yeah.
It's the one thing that I've never done is tell them that I'm the best at anything. I give my experience, I give my knowledge, and I share my skills, etc. Because I've used them, but also I know when pushing someone down a path they don't want to go down is of no benefit.
Yep.
It just causes resentment, and also there's no affinity there, so you're not going to work well together.
Yeah.
So I'd much rather than, especially on the mental health and the coaching side, if you want to be the best you can be, that means the person has to align with what you want. As a coach, as a trainer,
Yep.
pretty much everything in life, even in leadership.
Yep.
If I find a place that I don't like the culture that I work with, I'm quite happy to say, you know what? My feelings and my morals, etc., may not align with yours. However, here's a few coaches or trainers that do the same similar sort of thing to I do, but then they have a different perspective on it.
Yeah.
And I'm more than happy to do that because at the end of the day, what was my job? My job is to help and support people. My job isn't to just think about myself.
Exactly. You're not a salesman, you're somebody that's being of service. And I think that makes a
Exactly.
difference. And you find that out when you sit down with someone. And I also agree with you that I genuinely think collaboration is the way forward. There is no one size fits all when it comes to well-being and wellness. And we have to know who we can signpost people to. I see that as a responsibility, whether that be at an individual or an organizational level as well. Kez, you've been doing obviously a lot of work with organizations. What are some of the biggest challenges you've seen people facing at an organizational level when it comes to mental health and well-being?
It's getting the board of directors on a par. I will say also different departments as well.
Mm.
And I'm going to say this pretty much, and it's not meant to, it may sound nasty, but it isn't. We've got to stop trying to fit into little boxes. And we should stop expecting people to fit into little boxes because we're not the same. You know, within organizations, you must fit this culture, you must do this, you must fit into that. Well, okay. And we talk about job roles, etc., and things like that. You know, we're looking at having to change them, but we don't want them to change because that's what we want them to do. Well, hold on a second. This person isn't suited for that part of that job. That part of the job is more suited to that section. But because it's been done that way since millennia almost,
Yeah.
you know, we've got to stop thinking that, you know, these boundaries are still there. You know, we look at America, and America has more segregation than anything else. You have a look at race, you have a look at religion, etc., and things like that. Now, if you know, and that's even we get people to focus more on the past than we do on moving forward. Where are we at moving forward? You know, the issues in America with race, etc., is that we tell them they're African American. You know, you're 5 generations American. You're American. You're not African American. Your heritage is African. Just because you've got a different skin color. You've lived in America just as long as my family have. See you later.
Yeah.
And we see that in companies as well. But also, there's a lot of controlling leadership out here.
Mm.
That's my job. No one else should be doing it.
Yeah.
They haven't got time to do it, and they're not doing it well. But they're not willing to hand over the reins to anyone else.
Yeah.
That's my section. That's my box. You can't be doing my box. So this is what I'm saying. It's about segregation.
Yeah. What does the future look like if we're not putting ourselves or our employees into boxes? What does the alternative look like?
It should be fluid, shouldn't it?
What does that look
My
like?
view is, you know, work should be fluid. You know, we should be able to go into a job that we enjoy. Doesn't have to be that we love. You know, we may want to change, etc. But where we feel we have meaning, purpose, that we feel we can get the acknowledgement. So there's no segregation in that. You can get that from anywhere, any department, and things like that. You know, as long as you're feeling valued, engaged, then that should be the important part about the job that you do. And that's what leadership should realize now. That hold on a second, we're telling people how to lead people. You may not be the best person at the job in the world, but you're good at leading people because you understand their core skills. Where they would be best suited.
Yeah.
So we've been telling leaders that's what they should be doing. But we should also be telling them that's what we should be expecting from our staff as well. You know, that we should expect them to, okay, they may not be that good at that part of the job. Well, the person's not that part of that good job. Is there something that we can switch over within the job role?
Yeah.
And to me, I'd like to see more fluidity in our work boundaries, like roles, etc. But also in, you know, our working time and home time, etc. There are people that have families, etc. You know, young children, etc., that may need that little bit of extra time at home.
Yeah.
Why can't we give it to them?
Yeah.
You know, maybe have a person, you know, split several jobs together, amalgamate them, and give the people, yeah, you can do that bit at home. I need you to do this bit of work when you can come in. There's nothing stopping us doing that sort of stuff.
Why is it not happening in your eyes?
We're still stuck in the old ways. We're still stuck in the old ways. We're stuck in the old ways about, you know, the men's mental health. Yeah, just get over it. The whole stigma coming back. You know, man up. We hear all these phrases for men. You know, we talk about women empowerment, and there are some great people that empower women, but not every woman needs that empowerment because they're not empowered by doing what they do. You know, some people are stay-at-home mothers. I mean, the one thing that I get to do now that I never used to be able to do is I get to stay at home, cook, clean, which I actually enjoy, do my own ironing, I do all my own housework, etc. Because my wife works on a couple of hours. But there's an amalgamation there as well. You know, we know how we blend together.
Yep.
So why can't we be doing that in our jobs now?
Yeah.
I think until we get rid of the old stuffiness that we want to stick people in boxes, and this is your job role, you cannot veer from that unless I tell you you can veer from that.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, I think you're definitely on something there, particularly around, like you said earlier, right? Individuals, we need to be more introspective. Only then can we actually then blend with others and understand these things about each other and our teams. Because I think, and you hit the nail on the head when you said about there's a lot of controlling leadership out there. Well, yeah. So when you were talking about it being more fluid, is we don't control fluid, as it were, right? We put parameters in place. You know, we have pipes that allow water to flow. We put, you know, water into glasses. We create a support system for things to run and to flow and to work smoothly, right? And I think if we can loosen our grip on what those parameters look like as leaders and put some trust in employees to be able.
Autonomy is massive.
Yeah. Why is that?
I totally agree. With the autonomy side, we've got to trust people. We've employed them to do a job. Are they going to do that job? More than likely, if we give them a bit more autonomy, they'll be able to do that job better than we can do it.
Yeah.
A lot of time, which is why I said to you, you know, understanding a person, you know, understanding yourself and understanding that sometimes you just need to back off as a leader. You know, I was a leader for years and it took me a long time to learn that. Pretty much when I left the UK. So 13 years ago,
Yep.
in my you know, early well, when I just turned 40, it took me that long to learn that actually I was a pretty terrible boss when I was younger.
Yeah. And I
You
think,
know, I tried to get people to do what I wanted to do rather than they know their job, just leave them to do it. And then if there's questions afterwards, I'll answer them.
yeah, I think there's a massive rise in like obviously small businesses is what we're seeing. You know, the 2031 vision for the UAE is to become an entrepreneurial nation. And I think a big part of that is hiring people that are better than us to do certain jobs and certain roles and for us to facilitate the outcomes that we're looking for. So like you said, like a leader.
That's what the UAE's been doing for years. I just think we're all here at the end of the day. You know, we do all the stuff and we facilitate it. They guide to what their vision is, and then we use our biases, etc., to share that vision to the people below us, etc. So we're more of a facilitator, as you say. And I love that. But also, we need to employ the guys that know their onions out here. There's a lot of things where people are getting away with organisations where they're not following the laws, especially regarding mental health, etc., and things like that, well-being. But not only that, simple cases because they feel that they're justified because it's not making them, it's not exactly how they want it.
Yeah.
You know, when we talk about leadership and management, that's more the managerial side. I will manage you.
Yeah.
Or should, in most cases out here, I will micromanage you.
Yeah.
It's getting better, but I also think that we've got to be able to, people have got to open up and say, I need help doing this. Otherwise, you know, turnover is going to be bad.
Yeah.
My customer service is going to be bad because people aren't going to be valued in what I'm doing.
Yeah. We
Sorry,
teach people how to treat us, right? So if we're not opening up and saying, hey, listen, I need help, or I'm not doing so well right now, or I can't do this task, it's something as simple as that. If we don't do that, the assumption is that we can, right? And therefore that just encourages those perhaps more micromanaging leaders to keep doing what they're doing blindly, and everybody's holding in what perhaps they're actually thinking and feeling, and then at some point that explodes, and then people fall out of that ecosystem somewhere.
I was saying earlier about the understanding. There's that great saying: just because you can do something, it doesn't mean you should.
Yeah.
And vice versa. There are things that you can do that you need to hold off on. But we don't. We get an idea, let's full head into it, rather than thinking, okay, what is it? How is this going to affect the people that work for me, the people who are around me, my home? We start up new businesses, and we all know it's tough out here to start a new business. How is it going to affect the people around me, the people that I love, the people that I care about, whether that be friends, family, even neighbours, your community, etc.? What is the impact going to be on them? Until we know that, should we be doing something? It is very tough. As I say, the boundaries are there, but we need to maybe blur them a little bit so it makes it smoother to get between the boundaries.
Yeah, I hear that. You said something interesting there about like rushing in. We had this habit of just rushing in. And I think when we look at the wellbeing landscape, workplace wellbeing, there are a lot of leaders rushing into solutions without perhaps looking at the whole picture. And that's something that is slowly changing. I think as practitioners and as wellbeing consultants become more wise to perhaps the bigger context and the bigger picture of what wellbeing actually is. But I also think that that's becoming a bit of a norm. It's like, okay, well, let's just put this session on over here and that session on over there. Let's bring Kes in to do some mental health first aid training, and then no further support, and they just carry on with what they're doing. And it's like, oh, like we're taking these steps into it, which is so good that we're moving in that direction. But at the same time, I can't help but think maybe we need to pause to understand that a little bit more at that macro level.
So it's quite funny you say that about them. Yes, we'll get you in to do this sort of thing, and that'll be the end of it. But then again, they see it as, yeah, I've done my job now. Remember us talking about tick box a while back? Mental health, well-being, thanks very much. I've got a big tick on there. Cool, because I provided one session in 2 years. I do well-being for my staff. I worry about what they do. And the other day they sacked a guy because he was sick for a couple of weeks. We're not doing enough, I think. I think we should stop making it a tick box exercise and start looking at it into how we can improve the lives of the people that we're supposed to be helping. We're helping people, whether you're in leadership, management, etc., and things like that. Your aim is, if you look after the bottom line will always look after you. And that's in any business, a motor car, even the smallest cop being out of place can affect the whole system. So when we look at workplace wellbeing, I know we're supposed to start at the top with leadership, but sometimes the support is needed right now. So we've got to start working from both ends, not just one end. Looking at what is being provided, making those policies and plans that need to be in place so that your staff know exactly what you're going to do. If I suffer from a mental health issue, whether it be short-term or long-term, what do I know exactly what's going to happen to me? So putting the policies and plans in place, but also providing a safe place for them to talk if they feel that they're suffering, where there's no judgment involved.
Top down and bottom up, I think, is necessary, and that's what we're seeing with the organizations that we work in. What we do is we're seeing that we need to meet organizations where they are. There is usually an opportunity to educate on either the top end or the bottom end when it comes to the approach. But one of the things that we're seeing is that when we do both, and it's top and bottom, at the same time in parallel, that's where the best results tend to come. And that is, again, a bit controversial because there's a lot being spoken about, like it's got to be just leaders first. And I do understand the premise behind it, but that's not gonna help what's the current reality of people suffering.
Is you can't prevent something if you're not working on it already.
Mm. Yeah.
You get the bottom guys and you're working with them so that they understand that they've got that support that they need.
Yeah.
Yeah. And now you're training the managers to give that support.
Yeah.
You know, you're going to have a much better impact. And it's going to be felt over the whole organization rather than the top saying this, because at the end of the day, you know, going into well-being, etc., and mental health, you know, you've got to have a good sum of knowledge. But these guys are their knowledge isn't based on that. You know, and one of the things that I totally agree with is if you want somebody on your organization, yeah, it can't be just HR's problem. HR has to be involved. Occupational health and safety has to be involved. But you've also got to get someone in there that, you know, putting the framework there is all well and good. Yeah. Having your pillars there is all well and good. Unless you're filling that, it's still going to be a breezy little house that you're working into. There's still going to be people that slip through the holes.
Yeah.
And effectively, you don't want people slipping through the holes.
Yeah.
You want people to feel that they can have the support that they want without judgment.
Yep.
So that they feel safe. Because when we feel safe, we're a much better person.
I agree with everything that you've just said there. I think there is a gap in perhaps education for those who are in charge of well-being within organizations, because it isn't necessarily their background. Usually it's an add-on. So it will be typically somebody in HR that suddenly has to deal with well-being and put in the frameworks and the policies and the pillars together. Sometimes that obviously gets outsourced, and I think intelligently so most of the time, because there are people that are actually experts in this. You know, from us, it's a wellness point of view. For you, is clearly the mental health part of it as well. And there's some fantastic specialists that we work with that will look at the, you know, the nuts and bolts of health and safety. You've mentioned policy as well. And I think sometimes, like, we look at well-being as this small part of a business, and actually it's a full-time job of multiple people, really.
Exactly.
Exactly.
You know, if you're doing it correctly,
Yep.
Well-being should be implemented into everything.
Yep.
I know a couple of schools out here that are literally implementing well-being into everything, into the teaching in the classroom. Okay, what would it look like if something happened here?
Yep.
Could we maybe rearrange it so that the impact is less, etc., and things like that?
Yep.
And also, what happens with a person that maybe is having a mental health situation? What can we do to support them so that doesn't have an impact on those people around them as well?
Can you give us
If you feel that, you know, if somebody feels supported when they have those moments, but also you're trying to understand how that moment for someone can impact it. We all know that socially, you know, you can have, you know, you watch a film, get a bit teary-eyed, and instead of one parent starts crying, they will start crying. But it does that with mental health as well. You know, if someone's having a bad day and that is influencing onto others, they're going to have bad days. You know, they may not enjoy work so much. They may see their own issues coming to light as well that they maybe have forgotten about, etc. Things like that.
Yeah.
You know, that whole connectivity.
Yeah, and that cannot be ignored. Like you mentioned segregation in a slightly different context earlier, but it's the same idea here, right? If we try and look at well-being in silo, it's only going to go so far, right? We are interconnected within ourselves, within the immediate environment, and when we look, obviously, society and, you know, beyond. And I think you touched on a really important point there, is that one mental health issue can have this massive contagious effect. Can you share a specific example within an organization and what we have to consider when it comes to the policy, the situation, how that affects other people? What support ideally is needed in certain situations? Have you got one example that you could share?
Sorry. At the moment, yes, I have. Where somebody was at work having a mental health issue, and because of their position, that had an impact on those people that they were dealing with at the time.
When you say mental,
So when it happened,
when you say mental health
we
issue, Kez, just to paint a picture. So somebody in a leadership position has had a mental health issue. What was the mental health
yeah.
issue? And then what was the impact on the other people?
So I can't go into what the mental health issue was, but I can actually just say, let's just say it was a mental health issue, and it was affecting how she did her job,
Okay.
which impacted other people.
Yeah.
You know, but it took a while for people to coach her outside. You know, giving her that safe space, etc., giving her the time she needed to make sure that she understood what was happening and how the reasons behind it. Because a lot of the time we very rarely try to understand. We just try and mask.
Mm.
We want to put a band-aid over our mental health.
Yeah.
We drink, we drink drugs,
Yeah.
plenty of other what I call mental health crutches, things we do that but don't understand why we're doing them because we haven't looked into it ourselves.
Yeah.
And the best thing is that because she was given that safe space, etc., given the time to work on themselves, then she was able to come back to work and actually thrive. It is a well-known fact that we can either, during adverse situations, we can either come back and just let it beat us. We can have it. So when we come back but damaged, we can come back to our resilient, normal self, or we can thrive. And she, during our most adverse conditions, is our biggest opportunity to thrive, to get above that so that it doesn't happen to us again, etc. And we can use that coping mechanism for other things as well.
Yeah. And I think that it's important to recognize that the journey back looks very different for everybody as well. So what in that example that you gave, what were some of the conditions that the organization was able to create for her to be able to go on that journey for a mental health issue affecting the team, her perhaps exiting to work on what was needed and then to kind of re-enter the workforce? What were the conditions that allowed her to do that from the organization?
So initially, it's getting her out of the situation that was causing it. A lot of the time, we don't understand what's causing it because we don't ask the questions. Get her out of the situation that was causing the mental health issue, and then we're trying to talk her through repairing it, etc. It's really difficult to say without saying what it was. But we looked at how can we maybe remove the thing that was causing the trigger, removing the trigger to begin with. And then slowly building her up to being able to accept that trigger, but not have such an effect on her. So therapies, etc., and things like that.
Yeah. But
but also, when she came back to work, it was like it had never happened. So she was given time off as well.
And that was obviously supported by the organization. Was it paid
Yeah,
time?
yeah, definitely. Paid time off.
Yeah. And then this is what I mean, like when I say like trying to pull some specifics from you, is because sometimes I think it's easy to know that we need to support people, but sometimes that can be very like headline, right? To know what are some of the actual practical things. And I think allowing people to have paid time off when things like this ensue so that we don't then have financial burdens is important, to actually help them and give them the time and the space and the coaching clearly to be able to look at what is that trigger, to then look at, okay, what is the root of this so that we can prevent it happening in the future. Like that time and space I think is so valuable, and that security from a financial standpoint. Was there anything else that was clear?
So I would say, as you say, we've got to give them security so that they're willing to accept change. If we put them in another situation that can cause a different point of another trigger, so you say about the money side of it, okay? You're going to have unpaid leave. we'll give you unpaid leave. Okay, so how am I going to pay my bills? I've still got to live, etc. So now we're not only not closing one of the items, the mental health triggers, we've now got another one added on top.
Yeah.
So we've got to understand, how can we do best by this person
Yeah.
without it having an impact or causing more situation?
Mm. Yeah. What else can a company do to make sure that their teams that perhaps are struggling have got the other resources that they need? So paid time off, I think, is fantastic for any organization to be able to obviously give to their teams, but unfortunately that is very rare. Like you said, it's typically unpaid, which just adds more fuel to a already burning fire most of the time. What else? What other practical things could an organization do?
I would say get some of your staff trained as coaches. Coaches are great at drawing out that information.
Mm.
You know, too many times we see leaders, etc. They're not interested in the why it's happened. They're just interested in it's happened. How can they limit it from happening again? Rather than maybe looking a little bit further back. It's a trigger. Okay. Can I change that trigger point? Or can I actually remove that trigger point?
No.
And a lot of the time we don't do that. So as coaches, that's the reason why we question a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
You know, we don't tell people what to do. We want them to have the Einstein light bulb idea all by themselves.
Yeah.
Because they're going to be more invested in something that they've understood themselves than what somebody tells them.
Yeah. If we've got coaches in there at an earlier point, it then becomes more preventative than reactive as well, doesn't it? And I think that is where a lot of kind of that long game thinking and the investment that an organization can make into long-term results comes in. Because sometimes you can say, well, we'll give coaching to people that need it when they're struggling. It's like, okay, well, what about catching it before these people end up like falling in the stream and drowning?
So isn't that the funny thing? Positive psychology, I'm going to go back to this because I absolutely love positive psychology. Because the aim of positive psychology is to actually raise you better than what you are today. Yeah, it's not about working. Dr. Martin Seligman, 2004, he was the head of the APA, the American Psychological Association. And he said, psychology is pretty half-baked. We tend to work on those people after the damage is done.
Yep.
Why aren't we working with those people to prevent the damage being done?
Yep.
Which is the whole reason why positive psychology came around.
Yep.
I mean, there are some massive people out there that are really, really good at it. You know, Dr. Laurie Santos is great at Harvard.
Yep.
And I mean, she does a short course. Literally, it's a few days if you really, really get into it, etc., and things like that. Absolutely brilliant, and helping you understand the science behind, you know, what it's like for gratitude, etc. Understanding our own positive emotions and how to increase those without it being about, you know, we can't be lifting our own emotions if it's a detriment to other people's emotions.
Yeah.
You know, understanding that we want to lift everybody's emotions, not just our own. You know, so that our well-being now starts to go up that steps that I was originally talking about.
Yeah.
You know, we were on a certain level and we want to, you know, be higher. And then we'll still have the ups and downs like we always do. But we're now coming from a different base point.
Yeah. And that's where we go from good to great, right? And I think that's where we can start to then, that's when we start to really see the change when it comes to the bottom line, when it comes to well-being as well, I think. And I think that's where the opportunity potentially lies for most organizations, I think, in going from good to great rather than putting fires out over here.
I mean, at the moment, we're still putting fires out in the well-being because, I mean, I think it was 79 billion is the latest estimate for 2030 for how much well-being is going to be worth.
Yeah.
And there are people that say, I want some of that pie.
Yeah.
Rather than saying, okay, what do I need to do to help others so that I can have a little slice of that?
Yeah.
And that's the issue. There are quite. You have a look at the wellbeing retreats that have popped up.
Yep.
These multi-million-pound resorts.
Yep.
Is that what people need? No, what you're doing there effectively is you're playing into the mania. Or
Yeah. That's where we start going down the capitalism route, right? Rather than actually service to some extent as well. And also creating lasting change. I think we've seen this happen in the past. We've seen this happen with like motivation speakers, right? Instead of it being more health and well-being, it's been motivation and let's get ourselves pumped up so we can sell more, for example, in organizations. And yes, they've done a lot of studies on this to show that bringing in a motivational speaker will have a lasting effect for about 5 days, and then for the rest of the time, the rest of that month, we're probably actually performing a bit lower because now there's the come down from that. So it's not necessarily sustainable. So you send in people for a retreat, although that is nice and it's attractive and it's a nice fun thing, and there will be some connection that happens there, and there'll be things seeds planted there. But I think the real lasting change happens day to day. It happens in those small things that add up and build up over time, right? It's the culture change, essentially.
yes, but it's really the culture change. It's the change we make in ourselves. If we're doing, we're always trying to say 1 day better. If we're working 1 day better,
Yep.
It's okay if we have a couple of days of badness because we've been working on those 1 days better rather than, well, I'm just going to play it cool and then all of a sudden I'm just having a couple of bad days. And that's where a lot of the, anxious moments and depressive moments happen. Where we're so ready, we're not resilient anymore. We're not working on ourselves to improve ourselves. We're not working on ourselves to understand that something can happen and that it's okay to happen because you have zero control over it.
Yeah, which comes down to being accepting of where you are, but also being aware of where you are and what tools are available for you to be able to continue.
Exactly. Where you can get to is fine. Understanding where you can get to is fine. But you've also got to understand where you could plummet to.
Yeah, exactly.
What are those things those triggers that are going to send you over the edge so that you go off the cliff?
Yeah.
Are you able to climb back up that cliff, or are you just going to sit there and just say, "Oh, woe is me"?
Yeah. And
if you're not working on your resilience or even your optimism,
yeah,
yes, people misunderstand optimism, thinking it's about having those positive vibes only. You see it all, and actually, it isn't about that. Optimism is about hoping for the best of a certain situation, hoping that the good things do happen to you, but understanding what role you played in the things that didn't happen to you.
Yeah.
What was my part in it? Did I not do something right? Or was it that something that was out of my control? So why am I worried about it?
Yeah. And also not deleting the good things that you did and when on
the way.
Yeah. Because that obviously feeds confidence, builds resilience, because now we have a capacity that we can trust that we've built to be able to address those lower moments as well. And those lower moments are a lot easier to address when you are in a place where you feel safe and secure, right? And in company, right? It's a lot harder to be woe is me when you've got a supportive team around you. And, it's a lot tougher, which is why I think what you do with the training and the coaching is so important, because you provide that, and not only you provide it and support organizations, you give them the tools so they can do it without you.
But also, I understand that even when those moments affect me, I've got somebody that I can go to, I can trust to share those moments with somebody, and for them to say, okay, so what is it that's causing this, etc., things like that. Almost like my own psychologist that I speak to every evening. Because my wife does well-being, within the school work frame and things like that. But yeah, so I would say that feeling psychologically safe is part of it. Feeling that you've got somewhere to feel psychologically safe is another part. You can feel psychological faith until such time as something drops off the edge of a cliff. But if you don't know where to turn when that happens, that safe space has now gone, because your safe space is, I would say, is a medium. My view of it is it's a medium, that your safe space is where you feel comfortable. What happens when things don't get comfortable? Where does that safe space go?
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, is it like an elevator? Does it go with you?
Yeah.
You know, and if it doesn't, you know, that support is now removed almost, or you're afraid to go to that support, that safe space is no longer there.
Yeah, it's like it's conditional, right? When everything's good, right? The conditions are right and you feel okay, but we want unconditional security, right? That's the bit
That is what I get at. You know, psychological safety and security, it's great, but it's got to be unconditional.
exactly.
You
And that
know,
takes time to really imprint when it comes to an organization, I think.
build. You know, it's not a framework. You know, we've got to fill in the holes to make sure that people know and put the signs on it almost to say, this is where you can come at any time that you're struggling.
Yeah.
Great. Okay. What happens once I've struggled? What's going to happen after that?
Yeah.
You know, you can have that psychological safety for a certain amount of time
Yeah.
as well. You know, it talks about fluidity. You know, we've got to understand that a lot of our people, friends that we want, that we think we have psychological safety for, is yeah, I wouldn't trust that. I wouldn't go near them when I'm
Yeah.
on one of my low ones, etc. Because they're not interested. They're more interested in what they do, etc. and things like that. But that's organisations as well. Well, this is going to cost me money. Yeah, I'm going to get rid of the problem.
Yeah.
You've told me about your problem. We've told you it's okay to tell you about our problem. But guess what? Yeah, it's having a now the goalposts have changed because it's now, hold on a second, yeah, it's changed my profit margin or my workforce and you know my man hours, etc. And now it's costing me money.
Yeah.
So it's now working on both of them.
Yeah.
What is it right? I should have just get rid of them, it'd be easier.
Yeah.
People do opt for that easier way out
Yeah. And
with organisations.
we're seeing that, right, aren't we, as well? And Kes, before we hit record today, we were talking about the landscape perhaps in the UAE and the fact that there are certain rules coming into place. Can you share a bit more about that for us?
Yeah, so recently they just brought in the one where they are no longer allowed to dismiss a person for that has a mental health issue, which is fantastic. There's a couple of new rules that have been in recently, etc., with regards to the whole, especially with regards to the recent showers, etc., and things like that. Trying to able to support the guys to have time off work so that they feel, you know, that's enough to deal with. They don't need to be dealing with work as well as, you know, the struggles they've got at home and understanding where that's coming from. So the UAE I almost trying to find is that your family is a thing that is there for you, whereas your work life isn't. But we want you to work.
No.
We want to feel valued at work, etc., and things like that. And so that you become more resilient in your home life because everything's great there all the time. You know, you can get up on the wrong side of bed in the morning, have an argument with your wife or your husband, etc., go to work, and it can be your mates that are there supporting you. Yeah, don't worry about it. It'll be fine. You'll go back home, you'll kiss and make up, it'll be great. And generally, that's what would happen. And if it doesn't happen that way, at least while you've been at work at that time, and you've been able to think about what the repercussions of what's coming, etc., and things like that. So
Yeah.
I do think that work and home are more integrated than people realise out here.
Yeah.
You know, in the olden days, uh, it used to be, yeah, never bring your home life into work and never bring your work life home.
Yeah.
But we forget that actually the only reason you're at one of them is because of the other.
Exactly that. They are integrated. And I think you're right, we're like linking that to like the UAE and how we operate here to some extent. When it comes to the leadership, it is very
Mm.
holistic. You know, there are visionaries that are leading this region.
Yeah,
I think we are very fortunate to be here and be part of that and help build out that vision in many ways, because I think having that form of leadership at the top that has some fantastic visions in place, and also there's something like 60 different initiatives just in the last 12 months that have been activated based on their 2071 goal. And it's just like I don't see that necessarily being communicated so concisely in other parts of the world.
Something that we don't do over here in the UK, like, communicate things. You have a look at anything, yeah? There'll be an event on.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, yeah, well, it's happening next week. Oh, got plans.
Yeah.
A bit like we talked about earlier. Oh, there's this happening. Oh, right, I've already got plans for that. That's no good.
Yeah.
You know, we don't have time. You know, everywhere else, it's probably spread out for about 3-4 months, etc. But here, we leave it to the last minute to tell people and expect them to turn up.
Yeah. Yeah, that is definitely a big part of the culture here for sure. And I think that's where, again, the opportunity comes for long-term thinking and having the right people. Like we said earlier, what are some of those characteristics? What should we be looking for when we're making decisions about well-being? If you've got somebody that wants to rush in with a solution, question it, like scrutinize it and understand how does that actually link to the long-term goal, because otherwise we're just short-term thinking, and that also becomes a problem, right?
You know, we've got to understand that not only the good it can do, but also what happens when it all goes wrong. We've got to see both sides of the coin. We can't just look at the rose-tinted version. We've got to take the glasses off and scrutinize it to how is it going to affect other people? Yes, that's what I want for my country or my organization. But how is that going to impact others that maybe work for me? Or maybe, you know, that are trying to do something else completely different. You know, what can I gain from other people? We talked about collaboration briefly earlier on. And the reason I love it is because I love hearing other people's different perspectives on certain things. You know, I may not agree with them, but a lot of the time it is fascinating to see people's insights, especially if they're willing to explain more. And you know, this is what we should be doing about well-being, understanding our complexities of it.
Yep.
And if, say, something should happen, you know, being able to say, okay, this is how we're going to underpin it. We may not reach that goal, but we've underpinned it. So in the future, we're still going to be working towards it.
Yep. Yeah, that's the only way we create lasting change, right? Otherwise, again, just doing surface level solutions. Well, I wouldn't even call them solutions.
Exactly. As you say, it's like sticking a band-aid on a broken leg.
Yep.
Yeah, it doesn't quite work.
Yeah, exactly. So really, I think the core theme here, right, is we need to understand and listen to individuals, as ourselves, and then we can actually blend together and look at how we can support each other and see the effects that we have on each other. And that could be in personal life, in work life, anything.
Exactly.
I think another like really important takeaway from this conversation as well is being willing to look at both sides of the coin, be willing to see what's going well, look at the things that are not going so well, but really get to the root cause of what is it we're looking to change here, what are we looking to do, what underpins it, so that we can actually create important change around mental health issues and reduce the stigma.
You know, mental health is massive and it's new. You know, we don't get things right first time every time.
Yep.
You know, we've got to keep questioning. You know, we've got to understand that if something goes wrong, okay, what part did we play in this? You know, and that's why I say about working on yourself. What part did I play in that going wrong, etc., and things like that? But we should also be doing it within the mental health, the well-being side. You know, if something isn't going right, I would have had some parts played because nobody gets to just watch the change. You know, we're all part of it at the end of the day. You know, if we're in the arena, we're all part of the change.
Yeah.
You know, we've got to understand our role in that change.
Yeah, and be responsible for it.
Yeah. Take ownership.
Yeah.
Is the word I love to use. Take ownership of what we've done.
Yeah.
You know, take the accomplishments and everything else, but also be humble enough to say, yeah, I also made a few mistakes there. There are some things that I could have done better. Now I look back at it.
Yeah.
You know, we always say foresight is a wonderful thing, but we don't have it, unfortunately. So we can't do that. So we've got to look backwards.
Exactly, right? And that's where the
introspection. See how we make our changes.
Yep. And introspection for sure. Kes, thank you so much for coming on and sharing your vision and your wisdom and your experience with us. Where can our listeners come and find your work?
So, on my website, which is www.ksgwellnesscoaching.com, or on LinkedIn, Kes Smith Green. With a name like Kes, you'll be surprised at how few there are. So they're the main 2 points. And then obviously, I have a mobile, WhatsApp, etc., which they can all reach through my website, etc.
Amazing. And you've very kindly said as well that anybody that listens to this podcast that is interested in the mental health first aid training as well, there's a 20%
Yeah,
discount on that training as well.
yeah, definitely. So anybody that's interested for their organisation or even as an individual, I hold individual courses with a company out here that does special needs events, etc., and things like that. So every month we hold one mental health first aid for adults, one mental health to support children,
Yeah.
one first aid mental health, just as an awareness. But we also do other qualifications. So if you've got several mental health first aiders in your organisation, we also do a supervisory course as well, which is a lot more in depth. Generally about so just the regular level two, uphold regulated level twos are 8 hours. The awareness is 4 hours, but the supervisory is 16 hours.
Mm.
So it's a lot more in depth, etc. And yeah, you get a nice qualification
Nice.
at the end of it.
Here's a question for you, Kes. If we've got a leader listening to this and they're wondering how many mental health first aiders should I have, like based on the size of my team? So is there a specific ratio?
Um, there isn't out here. That's the issue. In the UK, they were looking at about once in, same as you would have normal first aiders. Why should you only have physical first aiders?
Yep.
How many is that? What is it? 1 in 150
Yeah, I
for
think,
physical first aiders? You should be having the same for mental health.
yeah.
You know,
I think
we
sometimes,
we, we think that physical first aid is medical and mental health first aid, or it should be done by a psychiatrist, but it's not. All they're there is so we can signpost them or send them to those people that know what they're talking about, that can help them get to the nitty-gritty details of what's been done. And a lot of people misunderstand what first aid actually means. It means it's preventative to stop things getting worse,
yeah,
to prevent a life being lost,
yeah,
to support them by, having that chat with them. Are you okay?
yeah,
What is it that's troubling you, etc. If it was mental health or if it was your first aid, you'd be like, okay, so what happened here? You try and gain that information. So then you can pass it on to the professionals,
yeah,
psychologists and psychotherapists,
yeah,
and even doctors, etc., and things like that, the ambulance staff.
yeah.
So that's all first aid is. It's not the big mysterious thing,
Yeah, and I think
and we've got to understand that.
I think there's an opportunity as well for organisations that perhaps have already invested in mental health first aid is to have a support system for your mental health first aiders. Because I
Yeah,
think that is often something that gets overlooked when we go back to box ticking, right? If we tick the box,
exactly.
got them, there's
Well, we've
people.
got some mental health first aiders, but who's supporting them?
Exactly. Yeah.
So some of the people that I do the mental health first aid with, I say, okay, you don't have enough people there to be doing it. However, I'm more than happy to come in and support you as and when needed. And I'm willing to do that, because I'm trained in it as well. So I'm a supervisor in it as well as an instructor. I don't just read the words off the screen and that's it.
No,
I've done the
very engaging.
training myself.
Yeah, I can imagine it's quite engaging doing it with you, Kes.
Uh, let's just say that there's one that said that they didn't enjoy the lesson yet. So that's okay. Yeah, a bit of a character, let's say that.
Well, I am happy that you have come today with your character in full swing and your experience. Thank you so much for coming on. Is there anything that our listeners need to hear as kind of a final thought from you?
Just if you need help, go and talk to somebody because at the end of the day, If you don't share what's going on with you, no one's going to know about it. We're not telepathically linked.
Yeah.
You know, nobody is in the world, no matter how much we see it on the cartoons and the programs, etc., and things like that. Just talk to somebody at the end of the day. If you're struggling with your mental health, or even with your well-being, you know, if you were struggling with your normal health, your physical health, you go and see a doctor. Or you talk to somebody about it. Oh, I've got pain in my leg. And they will say to you, yeah, go see a doctor.
It's usually go.
Why don't you do that same as,
Yeah,
you know, with your mental health,
exactly.
well-being?
Exactly. And it's always surprising, I think, for people when they speak up for the first time, is when you then start to learn that usually the person that you speak to can relate, and they're like, yeah, me too, you know, and there usually becomes a this
Yeah,
notion that suddenly you're not on your own as well. I experienced that when I experienced my kind of first mental health. I
yeah,
say
exactly.
issues, but my awareness.
So,
Yeah,
so,
yeah, exactly.
you know, you can't say, oh, yeah, I had a mental health disorder. No, you just had an episode, love. And this whole self-diagnosis as well, you know, don't diagnose yourself. Don't see a specialist. You know, too many people will say, oh, yeah, I broke my toe.
Yeah,
You get it checked out? No, they can't do anything for it anyway, so it's fine. You wouldn't do that, would you? You go and get it checked out. So
exactly,
why would you say, oh, yeah, I've got depression,
exactly.
when you've not been seen by somebody that can actually go, you do suffer from depression. What can we do to support you?
Yeah, exactly.
You
It's
know,
very,
self-diagnosis is massive nowadays.
yeah, it's very different from just googling your symptoms, isn't it?
Yeah, well, you tend not to be able to Google your symptoms because, as I say, we're all individual.
Exactly,
You know, I'm
exactly.
feeling sad. Yes, depression.
Yeah,
You
exactly.
know, we shouldn't be doing that.
Exactly. But unfortunately, that is what people lean into, right? Especially because
Yeah,
there's a lot
of
of shame
course you do.
shame around mental health, is they will Google their symptoms before they speak to somebody about it. Is this normal?
Mhm.
You know, one of the most
Rather than just saying, okay, doc. You know,
yeah,
it's the one thing that, you know, we should all be doing. Being able to speak to somebody where they can question us. So, not that they need to have an understanding of it, but they can question us to allow us to reflect on those feelings and what we're feeling, etc.
yeah, exactly. They're very
That's what we need to be doing more.
for sure. Kes, thank you so much for your time
Thank
today.
you very much, Charlotte.
If you enjoyed this episode and you haven't done so already, hit that subscribe button so you never miss an episode.
Please share it with a friend who you think might benefit.
Spread the word. That's how we're going to impact the world, by helping each other.
We appreciate you so much, and as always, unconditional love and wellness to you.